Man, if Auburn plays like they did last night, I don't know if anybody in the country can beat them.
What if Alabama plays like they did Tuesday night and Auburn plays like they did Wednesday night?
Oh, and we have that for the national championship that Monday night.
Yeah, does anybody beat either team in that case,
Could
Jim?
be the longest game in history.
It plays both teams score in the hundreds.
Easily at that point. No, just last night down at Neville Arena, I mean, you can go offense. They scored over 50 in each half. Mm-hmm. They started off 4 from 3, 6 of 7 from 3. You could go no turnovers, 8 turnovers. They protect the ball against a Chris Beard defense. They had 20 assists, so they were dishing the ball. I mean, there was nothing but boxes checked last night from the number 1 team.
Well, if I told you the Rebels had five guys scoring double figures, they shot 47%, they hit 23 free throws, you'd be like, damn, maybe this is because I heard somebody
closer than I thought.
Yeah.
I thought that Auburn might lose this game. I think people are just waiting, based on the SEC schedule, for Auburn to drop another one. But you look at the other side, Auburn dominated the glass, and boy, their size was a issue for the Rebels.
Yeah.
They shot 59%. They hit 11 threes, and they hit 27 free throws.
Yeah, and you said their size. They had 8 blocks.
Yeah.
I mean, not just hindering shots and getting rebounds. They blocked 8 shots.
Yeah, I think, team-wise, 2 stats that jump that you just never see in 40 minutes of basketball. 20 assists, 8 blocks.
Yeah. And really only 8 turnovers. I think Ole Miss. Am I right about that? They were one of the best teams in the country on fewest turnovers, and it's like 8.9 a game.
They had 1 against Kentucky.
Yeah.
They played Kentucky at home and only had 1 turnover. That's almost impossible to do.
And I know the turnovers probably aren't as emphasized as they are at college football or the NFL. But this is the first time Ole Miss has lost the turnover battle all season.
Yeah. Yeah. Only 8?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, first time all season. I mean, I think you make an argument this was Auburn's best game.
Yeah, I mean, we said that about Alabama Tuesday. You can make the argument about Auburn today.
Yeah.
That we may have just seen both of them play their best game of the season.
Yeah,
rip Mississippi.
Put it this way, if we were printing brackets, I think you'd see a lot of Alabama and Auburn Final Four. I think 85% probably would have them right now.
Right now.
Yeah. I don't think it'll change with Auburn. I think Alabama still maybe loses a game or 2. Maybe it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think they're on the edge of the ones. Even, I mean, with 2 losses, I don't think Alabama's out of the 1 discussion by any stretch of the imagination. Now, some of that depends on what everybody else does.
But you just had Florida lose on the road
that
in
helped.
Georgia.
That definitely helped. And if Alabama can find a way to scrape out a difficult win against Tennessee, then you might be talking about Alabama and Auburn both being locks on the 1 line at that point.
No way Auburn falls off now.
No, not now. Not falls off the 1 line. I'm not even sure they could fall out of the overall 1 seed right now.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, if Auburn goes on and closes out the deal, I mean, sans what happens in the NCAA tournament, are we maybe sleeping on Auburn as one of the better regular season teams of all time? I know it sounds kind of crazy, but when you look at their depth, you look at their experience, you look at just the flat-out results. Steven kind of joked about us bringing up they hadn't played any tight games, and the games have gotten a little bit tighter. But when you look at the totality of the season, they have been dominant. And to only have 1 loss in this crowded SEC right now, because we're talking about other teams that are going to be sub 500 that will get in the NCAA tournament because of the difficulty of the conference, and we're talking about a team that might only lose 1 conference game.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Oklahoma is now 5-11. Am I right about that, or 5-10, or whatever?
They're 5-10.
5-10, and they're still very much alive.
Yeah, and I still hear that they're a good team.
Yeah. Texas is 5-10,
and they're less alive than they were going into last night, but they're still alive.
Both of them are about in the same place.
Yeah.
Back to your point on Auburn as one of the greatest regular season teams of all time. We discussed it, I think, 2 weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, on our basketball show podcast. And the way Taylor and I did it, we broke it down from 2000 forward or 1990 forward, because you can't get back to Indiana Hoosiers in 76 when they were totally unbeaten, or those UCLA teams in 71, 72, 73, around that era. It's hard to compare that era. But when you go with, Leitner and Hurley's Duke teams and some of those Nova teams and some of those UConn teams and the Florida teams, Auburn's right there in the mix. And when you use KenPom metrics, they haven't been around that long. Auburn's off the board in the KenPom metrics right now.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, and again, that's why I said you got to take the NCAA tournament, whatever happens, kind of away, at least right now when we're talking about this. Because if they were to go on and only lose 1 SEC game and they won a national championship, then I think it's one of those teams we would remember. But the teams you continue to bring up are teams that won a national championship.
Yeah,
and that was our scenario. We played it out to if they went on to win the national championship.
Yeah,
where would they be
because
remembered?
the best, I still say the best team I ever saw in my lifetime was the undefeated UNLV team. But we never think of them as the best team ever. Why?
They lost the last game.
Well, because they lost to Duke. And,
That's right.
And they also, the regular season, back then it was the Big West.
Oh, they didn't play anybody.
I mean,
Right.
who
but
did
they ran them out of the gym every night. Didn't they?
They did.
I remember
they
their
killed
average margin of victory in the regular season.
I remember the one game I don't think they covered was against Long Beach State, and it came down to a couple of free throws.
Yeah.
So Long Beach was kind of their St. Mary's to Gonzaga back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day.
But to your point,
But we don't ever talk about them because they didn't even make the championship game, Jim.
the strength of the SEC this year only adds to Auburn's legacy.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's just so impressive. Not only are they winning all of these games, Sans won, they're dominating when they do it. But, the problem is, Auburn fans will remember this. We'll remember it because we covered it. But if they don't close the deal and make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, it's much like, 2011 LSU regular season football was incredible. And then they had the rematch with Alabama. And based on that 60 minutes of football, I mean, how different is the perception of LSU in 2011? Nobody talks about it.
And it was one of the best teams
Ever.
in LSU history.
Yeah. I mean, they dominated all the time. The one game that they really had, trouble with was in Tuscaloosa, the game of the century. Even in the SEC championship game, they popped Georgia good.
That LSU team was one of the better defensive teams. They struggled at quarterback, one of the better defensive teams in SEC history. So Auburn's got a chance to, continue to do things unbelievably well. They're off to their best start since the 1999 season. They are 26-2, 14-1 in the SEC in what's being called the toughest conference of all time. And Bruce Pearl talked about that after the win last night, 106-76 over a Sweet 16 style Ole Miss team.
Coach, you've talked about making history and how good this league is. This is the best start, a program record for the best start through 15 games in the SEC. Can you speak to just what your guys have done, what they've been able to do this season, and kind of what it means to reach that mark?
So this is the best 15-game start?
14-1. 98-99 was 13-2, I believe.
And that's for Auburn?
That's for Auburn.
Okay, yeah. Well, but they don't play 15, they play 18. So let's come seek me out after the 18th game.
Well, I'll say this though,
Boy, coaches are difficult.
They do not want to. They don't want to talk about hypotheticals and look forward.
Meanwhile, if we were downplaying the 14-1 start, it'd be like, how come nobody's talking about our 14-1 start?
So I don't know if you guys remember our discussion when we discussed what would it take to win this league. This is before league play started. What would it take to win this league?
I think we said 15-3.
I think I said 14-4. I think y'all might have said 15-3 could do it. I mean, Auburn's worst case now is 14-4, and I don't think they're going to lose 3 straight games here.
Yeah, I think I settled on 14-4, maybe 15-3.
Alabama
14-4.
Alabama certainly hopes the answer is 15-3. It gives them a fighting chance.
Yeah,
to
we
still
talk
be in
about
there.
Alabama's final 3 games. I mean, Auburn's are
they're
pretty
not easy.
brutal too.
Yeah. A&M feels a little different after last night, but everybody has a one-off bad game.
Yeah, well, I mean, A&M's lost 3 straight, but
I'm talking Vandy last night.
Yeah, but if you go back a week ago, we were talking about, man, this Alabama team, this defense.
Yeah.
I just don't think they can do anything.
But no, that's the SEC right now. We'll get into everything else in the SEC. But to Auburn's finish, they're on the road at Kentucky. Last night they got Jackson back. They got Lamont back for Kentucky, and they got a big win. We'll talk about it in a second. But it'll be a whole Kentucky team, as whole as they can be, up at Rupp Arena 12 noon on Saturday for the Auburn Tigers. One other note, Johni Broome went into the 2,500 club last night. Only the 86th player in Division I college basketball history to do that. Sears did it earlier this year. You got to be around a long time to do that, but Chad Baker's been around a long time, and he went into the 1,000-point club earlier this year.
Oh, what a game for Chad Baker.
Yeah, Chad Baker, great shooting last night, 22 points, 24-9 for Johni Broome. And on the way down, Little T was like, hey, it looks like the odds have flipped on National Player of the Year. Broome is now the betting favorite. And I see Bleacher Report on the Wooden Award has flagged the favorite. This thing is starting to move Johni's way, I believe, a little bit on this national discussion about Player of the Year. 24-9 against that Ole Miss team. They came out and they were going to try to front him, to have the guy in front of him to try to
Bad idea.
basically make you lob it into him.
Yeah, which Auburn
By
did.
the way, Auburn had no problem doing that.
Yeah, we'll lob that thing right away, won't we?
Boy, Ole Miss doesn't have any size, though. Back to the player of the year. I think the way to do this, and I don't know if you'll ever have it like this again, because normally there might be 3 or 4 players in the mix, but it has been wire to wire, those 2 guys, Cooper Flagg, Johni Broome. You know, there was a time where Johni, before the ankle injury, was a pretty heavy favorite. So at that point, jump on Cooper Flagg. And then after a couple of down games, possibly, including the injury, then it becomes a huge margin again, but in the favor of Cooper Flagg. So then you could have got on Johni Broome. You could have gotten a huge middle with these 2 if you would have played them at the right time.
Yeah, you're right about that. So the Wooden Award is the one my bookie has the odds for. They don't have the odds for the Naismith. And I don't know if you can remember the numbers. I gave them the other day. Like, Flagg was like a minus 500 something favorite.
Yeah, you were like minus 526, but Broome was like minus 220 or something.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. That's about what it was.
We were surprised that both were minus.
Correct. Well, they still are.
Yeah.
But today, Broome is minus 800. So he's going from 220 to 800. And Flagg has gone from 500 something to minus 193. Did they vote at the end of the regular season? You're a voter.
I am a voter.
You've already got your Broome vote in, I'm sure.
It's who I'm going to vote for.
I know.
Did they send you a broom?
They have not. I was joking with Little T. I was like, back in the old days, if you were like a Heisman voter, you would have got little gifts from all over the country.
Yeah.
And I was like, Auburn would send out a little whisk broom probably with a 4 on it.
Well,
the reason
I mean, Pat Kelsey, they sent you the glasses.
They're the only. That's the only one I've got.
When I was a Heisman voter, still at the time where they used to do that stuff. I don't think as long as you've been a Heisman voter, you've probably never gotten any of that
I just
stuff.
have to confirm an email.
Yeah, but I got a Jordan Lynch. You remember him at Northern Illinois?
Yeah.
I got a Jordan Lynch lunchbox. I don't know why they did it, but it was not really a lunchbox. It was like one of those tiny soft-side coolers.
Yeah.
Not worth anything.
Yeah.
Like I never even used it. I just tossed it aside. But
So where
was
do you
the
think
weirdest
that
one I
is?
got.
In a dump somewhere, a landfill?
Yeah. Yes, maybe down here on the off ramp.
Some kid in Ecuador's, pulling out his bologna sandwich
Who's
right now.
Jordan Lynch? I don't know, but he must have been the greatest football player of all time. I got one more thing on the Auburn game.
Okay.
We're getting some of this in the chat room, and I was asked 2 or 3 times about this last night. Poor Charles, anytime he goes to an Auburn game, ESPN's going to drag him over. Regardless who the announce crew is, Charles is going to get dragged over there, and Charles doesn't care. I mean, he's great, but
I got 3 texts during the game. I didn't get to hear it.
what was going on in this thing? Like, none of us. Lance and I were both at Odie's, and this was in the second half, and
no volume.
There is volume, but there's also competing volume, so I can't really hear what he's saying.
I didn't
just know
hear it.
Charles
I don't
is
want
there.
to. I don't want to bring it up, but people were insinuating that he had a Redmont vodka or 2. Well, hell, it's his day off. First off, and he's not going to work. And it's up to ESPN. ESPN's going to drag him to a microphone, and he's nice enough. He's going to say yes.
You on the text you got? So the text I got, everybody was like funny as hell, and I heard Neuheisel talking about it this morning. Funny as hell.
Yeah, exactly.
And it goes back to what we brought up with Clay when he pulled the "See you next Tuesday" or "See you next Thursday" to you multiple times. Certain people, their actions, their words, it's different. Like if that would have been, pick somebody else on their off day, as you said. Give me somebody else. Let's just throw it. If LeBron James,
If it was Tiger Woods,
Yeah, he'd be getting killed. No, you're right about
would be
that.
getting killed. But Charles is just like, man. Hey, look, this is part of Charles.
Well, it was also a bunch of alumni were back for Auburn. We're being honored. Sonny Smith, the great Sonny Smith, was there, and Charles, walked over, big, huge hug with Sonny, sat by Sonny courtside there for a little bit, and then went back to his other seat and back into the season ticket booster lounge for a while. Listen, you can have 0 drinks, and if you're having a good time, or if you're sleep deprived, you may sound a little in a fun mood. He was in a fun mood last night.
Yeah, some people are just punch drunk, right?
Hey, and I know he's got a driver. I know he's staying the night in Auburn, and he's a freaking adult. So I
didn't hear anybody that was critical.
I don't care if he had 62 Redmont vodkas.
Yeah, that's all I'm at. I didn't know if he was drunk or not, and I don't really care. To your point, that's ESPN's choice. I was just curious what everybody was talking about because everybody was like, "Did you see Charles?" I was like, "I was in Odie's. I saw him. I couldn't hear him." Like, you got to try to find it, and nobody would really tell me what I'm trying to find except that it was hilarious. I'm like Lance. Everybody was like, it was
like
hilarious.
in the chat, is anybody being negative about it?
No. Everybody was saying it was hilarious, and it went for 20 minutes.
That's what my texts were saying. They're like, man, he's in a good mood. Has he had a Redmont vodka? Did y'all have a drink before? And I said, I did not have a drink with him before.
Yeah. But people were like, it went for 20 minutes, and it did seem like it went a long time. Now, game's a blowout, so they're filling time.
Dude,